The Hunchback of Notre by Victor Hugo. Chapter 1. The Feast of Fool's Day. It was January 6th, 1482, in the city of Paris. A church bell was ringing, then another bell was heard, and then another. All the church bells in Paris were ringing, but the loudest bells came from one church. It was a big old church in the heart of the city. It was Feast of Fool's Day, a great day of fun. It was a day when all of Paris had a great big party. It was the day to pick a new king, not a real king. This was just for fun. The people of Paris walked to the old church, the church of Notre Dame. They were waiting for the party to begin. It was to start at 12 o'clock. It would begin with a play. The people looked up at the church's big clock. The hands of the clock were not on the 12. They would just have to wait a little longer, but they grew tired of waiting. "The play! The play! The play!" they shouted. "Let's start the party now!" The people began pushing and fighting. At last, it was 12 o'clock, and the play began. But the people were shouting so much, they didn't know it had started. They would not stop shouting. They would not stop fighting. And so the play was called off. "Pick the king!" shouted the men. "Yes, let's pick the king!" shouted the women. And so the people had their way. To become the king of fools, you stood before the people. Then you put your head through a hole in a board. Then you made an ugly face. The person who made the best ugly face became the fool. That person would be fool for the rest of the day. It was a very silly game, but the people of Paris thought it was fun. The ugly faces made everyone laugh, but the people liked one ugly face best of all. The man who had made that face came out from behind the board, and when he did, the people looked surprised. They saw that he had not been making an ugly face at all. His face looked that way all the time. "It's the man who rings the church bells," a woman shouted with surprise. "His name is Quasimodo," said a fat young man with a laugh. Quasimodo was short and fat. His red coat was covered with little silver bells. He had a big hump on his back. Because of his hump, he was called a hunchback. His hair was red, and he had only one good eye. And when he smiled, a tooth was missing. Some thought Quasimodo was as bad as he was ugly. Quasimodo looked around. He looked at the people's surprised faces. He saw many happy faces. Some were smiling. Others were laughing. He didn't understand this silly game. Why, he didn't even know it was a game. For Quasimodo was death. "Look at him!" shouted an old woman. "He doesn't know what's going on. Don't you people know that he can't hear you? The loud church bells have made him deaf." "Well then," said one man, "he will be the best king of fools ever." Quasimodo was given a nice robe to put on. A make-believe crown was put on his head. Then he was carried around the city. Quasimodo smiled at everyone, missing tooth and all. He didn't know what he was smiling about, but he was having fun. Chapter 2, coming soon.